Hi guys, welcome back to another video. It's been quite some time, I know, and I apologize for that. What excuses do I have? Excuses I have are plenty and manifold, and but I'm not going to give you any here. Okay, couple videos today to make up for the backlog, and the first one I want to talk about is Dostoevsky's very first work, but you can't say it's his very first finished work because he never finished it. It is called Netochka Nezvanova, okay? And apparently that translates to the Russian as a nameless nobody or something like that. Now, as you can see, it's not a very thick book. In this Penguin edition, it's 173 pages. It's definitely early Dostoevsky. That's clear. I suppose the most interesting thing about the timing of this book, is that this was something he wrote before he went to prison. And as most people know, he was implicated in a revolutionary group. He had their literature on him, and he was arrested, and he was going to be executed, but the execution was stayed, and he was sent for a few years to prison. So, and a reflection of his prison experience would be in a subsequent work. I don't know if it's the very next work he wrote, but I'm sort of guessing it was. And that is, of course, my gosh, of course, Notes from a Dead House. So anyway, going back in time before his prison sentence, um, there's a lot of interesting things that you can say about this book. It's pretty cover, really cool. Anyway, it's about a little girl who, a poor little girl had a bad sort of upbringing, and the first part of the story focuses on her stepfather. Her stepfather was apparently a very talented musician, but like many of Dostoevsky's characters, irrationally um, an irrationally misfit, and though very gifted, didn't translate his work into a profitable living or anything like that. So it's sort of interesting. This part of the story is sort of interesting in writing, working on the book that I'm working on right now, in terms of authors' views of their writing. Okay, the spiritual or intellectual process of writing, or conceptions, or whatever. There's something interesting here in that the young Dostoevsky, it's not a stretch to say that in writing about this failed musician, who's very talented, obviously, it's reasonable to suppose that he's setting up a parallel between himself, believing he's a gifted young writer, but not having published anything. He has nothing to prove that he's a talented young writer. So there's kind of a parallel between this failed musician who knows he's talented and yet produces nothing, and Dostoevsky, who's a young talented writer who has thus far produced nothing. So that's the figure of his of the girl's mother and father. They disappear about, I don't know, a third or a halfway through the book, and then the little girl is adopted by, well, not officially adopted, but taken in by a wealthy family, family of some prince. And so the next third of the book, so let's divide it up in thirds. The next third of the book is concentrates on the girl's friendship and problems with the daughter of the family that takes her in. Okay, so that's the next bit of the book. And the last third of the book is the little girl goes to St. Petersburg, and Petersburg at the time. Not this little girl, but the little princess goes to Petersburg, and so their friendship is discontinued. and then the this Netochka is taken in and raised by the first princess's sister. I think I've got that right. So anyway, the sister of the first family. And so the last third of the book is about her relationship with that woman. Okay, so you got these thirds more or less. Now again, the book is it ends at a good point actually. It ends at a good spot because right at the end, the original young princess who went to Petersburg and their friendship was discontinued, she's about to get back in Netochka's life. Okay, so that is where Dostoevsky ended the book. It's interesting that he didn't want to pick up on the book after he was in prison. Okay, so after the, I don't know how long it was, 3 or 4 or 5 years or whatever that he was in prison, he didn't come back to the book, but preserved it. So I mean, we have it now, so it's not like he threw it in the garbage or anything. And but he never went back to it, and I think the reasons are probably easily guessed at, but I would. Of course, I would defer to Joseph Frank, who's the great biographer of Dostoevsky, for a better answer than I probably can give you. But my surmise is that his Dostoevsky lost interest in the subject, no longer reflected his immediate concerns, and I think his immediate concerns are more properly fleshed out in The House of the Dead, or A Dead House, however you want to translate the title. So, and the writing style, the writing quality, the narrative quality is good, but it's not Dostoevsky good. Okay, so it's very descriptive. There's much less dialogue than usual, but not, there is dialogue. And one thing you'll notice from this book is there's very little description of the environments. Okay, I mean, you get the impression that Netochka grew up in a slummy little apartment, and then you get the impression that she was moved to a large, nice house, and then another large, nice house. But Dostoevsky tells you basically nothing about the setting of any part of this book. Okay, it's completely it's completely interested only in the unique personalities. Okay, and so another common criticism of Dostoevsky is the craziness of his characters, or the unusualness of the characters. And so, I mean, that can be said for her father, her stepfather, who is inexplicably, well, he would have to be crazy in some way to not use his talent, or in fact, maybe he made up his talent, because you don't really see it being presented anywhere. So he's a bit crazy. There's no real reason given for why Netochka's mother married him. She had more money than he did, and eventually he pissed it all away. Um, that's very common with Dostoevsky's characters. Like even the Karamazov father, we're never given any explanation for why he's so weird, right? We're never given any explanation for why Raskolnikov is so weird. I think Ivan and Aloysia, the characters of Aloysia and Ivan Karamazov are, they're not as weird or inexplicable. They are accounted for to some extent. And Dmitri, you're not told everything about them, and that's not weird. Like, it's not unusual that, I mean, how can a novelist account for every aspect of a personality? Like, I don't know, like people are just born a certain way, aren't they? And you just have to take them for the way they are. Certain aspects would require some explanation, but certain aspects are just, this is who this person is. So for a Dostoevsky novel, it's not good, but overall it is a powerful presentation. Now, okay, I talked about Dostoevsky's use of crazy characters. Another thing here is Dostoevsky's female characters. One of the things it's interesting here, like, I mean, you have to admire any male writer who would devote so much time to trying to present a female character like Netochka and the little princess or whatever, and then Netochka's sort of foster mother or whatever. You have to admire authors who do that. But what's interesting, I suppose, is, I don't know, like, there are times when it's just strange. Okay, so like today, there's like, for instance, a passage, the little girls don't get along very well, mainly because the princess thinks she's better than the other girl, and they basically, in the end they become friends and all that, but they become very physically affectionate. There's lots of mention of kissing and all that stuff, and in our weird modern age, of course, we interpret everything sexually, and maybe it's just my problem. I'm just, too modern, right? So, but it is a little uncomfortable. Like, there's a passage there that makes me a little uncomfortable with how much these girls are kissing each other and all that. But again, different time and place, blah blah. Okay, do I recommend reading this book? It's not on your top 10 list of things to read from Dostoevsky. Maybe it's on the top 15 list. But if you want to know everything about Dostoevsky, as I do, then you got to read it, right? So knocking off this book leaves me with very few of Dostoevsky's fiction left to read. Very little. Anyway, so thanks for listening, guys, and we're going to make another video in a minute. Thanks so much.